Hey there, and welcome to the Pursuit of Progress, where getting better every day is the name of the game. We're here to spark your curiosity and supercharge your life with fresh ideas, fun conversations, and practical tips. Ready to level up and have a blast doing it? Well, let's dive in. Let's dive in to the pursuit of progress.
What is up, you guys? Hope everybody's having a great day today. Happy Friday. So, today we're going to be diving into the importance of mental resilience, not just in life, but also just in our careers and any other pursuits that we have going on currently. We're going to explore these actionable tips for building mental toughness, like embracing discomfort, practicing gratitude, and just understanding how these skills can help you push through challenges. We're also going to explain the 5 stages of entrepreneurship, especially focusing on the critical third stage, which is known as the valley of despair. And that tough third stage is actually where most people quit. But if you can push through, the other side is where true success awaits. So, really excited to share all of that with you guys today.
Well, that's so exciting, and let's dive in. That we're having this conversation because mental toughness is just to have it. We're going to go through really difficult times in our lives, in our personal relationships, in our business. Felt like giving up at times. Learning to be mentally resilient is just so incredibly important. That you have a mentor that you're talking about frequently who's really had a big influence on this perspective of mental toughness. So just kind of give us an idea of what you've learned and how you've learned it.
Yeah, so one of my mentors, he's also a good friend of mine. His name's Eli Schmidt, and he's one of the 2 guys that started Legit Agents, which is the real estate group that I'm with here in Denver. They're actually we're agents all over the country at this point, but they're just specifically Eli, just super motivational, but really also great with giving these actionable tips and just advice, and just really doing a good job with providing just different stories to help relate to some of this stuff. When it comes to mental toughness, this first little story I want to share that ties into these 5 stages of self-improvement or entrepreneurship, you can really, use this 5 stage idea with other things than just entrepreneurship. So if you're not an entrepreneur, don't sweat it. This can still definitely apply to you as well. But so Eli was kind of similar to both of us, where he's also really into health and fitness, and he actually was a trainer back in the day and helped other people prepare and get ready for bodybuilding shows. But he also competed and went through these preps himself. And he talked about just how, for anybody that has done a bodybuilding show or just any sort of a fitness competition and gone through this prep stage, prep is something that can really wear on you mentally. You're taking in less calories than you probably should. You're just really struggling with feelings of hunger and just frustration, and just you're a basket case at times. So he was talking about how with both his clients and also himself, there's this huge mindset shift when he understood really just the physiology of a couple different, what are they? I guess they're hormones in your body, to understand
Mm.
where those feelings are coming from. So, and I won't go too in depth on this, but just to explain this to you guys, the first one is called ghrelin, and it's often referred to as the hunger hormone. It is what stimulates appetite, and it just basically signals your brain that it's time to eat. It's, produced primarily in the stomach, and these levels increase before meals, which is prompting that hunger feeling. So in a bodybuilding prep, again, you're trying to be at a caloric deficit. So you're not taking in as many calories during that final part of your prep. And bodybuilders and people that are going through that phase, it becomes this incredible just fight internally with your mind to avoid going to the fridge and grabbing some food. And once Eli specifically was able to understand that, hey, this feeling that I have right now, this hunger, it's just a feeling. It's a fight or flight response that my brain is signaling to me, I'm not going to die. I'm just going to sit in this feeling that I'm having and understand that it's just a feeling. It's going to pass. It's not anything that's actually, detrimental. It's not like I'm not eating for 2 weeks. It's just this feeling that you have. And basically once you're able to understand that that's just some feeling, it's nothing legitimate, it really changes your mind shift. So then when you start to have that feeling, you realize it and you're like, you know what? No, that's just that ghrelin talking. It's nothing serious. I'm gonna be okay. I can go another few hours until my next meal that I'm scheduled to take is. So I'm going to relate this in a minute to one of these stages, that third stage, the valley of despair, because that's similar to what that is, that same feeling.
Okay.
And then I'll talk
Yeah,
through.
it's like once you like if you know what you're working with and you know that this is gonna happen, it's like you can face it in a more productive way.
Correct. And then the second hormone is called leptin, and this is known as the satiety hormone, so basically the fullness hormone. And it helps regulate your energy balance by signaling to your brain that you have enough energy stored, and you are by understanding that you're reducing that hunger and that food intake. So just really understanding the differences between this leptin and ghrelin, and that it's more than anything else. All I want to get across with explaining those two hormones to you is it's just a feeling. And once you understand that some of
Yeah.
these aspects of whether it's a serious thing you're going through in your life or in your business as a phase of entrepreneurship, once you understand that that's just a feeling and nothing that's actually the world's not going to end. You know what I mean? Once you understand that, you can have that mindset shift and really take this to different levels and almost embrace when you're having that feeling, knowing that that's in
Mhm.
where the progress is being made. By having that feeling, you know that you are doing the right thing. You are in that state where you are at a caloric deficit in this scenario, or in business, if you're going through some really tough stuff and you're overwhelmed, embracing that feeling that you're in at that moment and knowing that that's not the time to quit. That's the time to mindset shift and understand that the light is at the end of the tunnel. You're almost there. Push through, and there's a
Mhm.
greener pasture on the other side. There's, all this opportunity and success waiting if you can just get through that feeling, that mindset.
Now, for a bodybuilder, you reference caloric deficit. For a business owner, would that be similar to like a cash deficit?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it could be a myriad of things. It could be related to that. It could be maybe a growing pain in your business where you open up a new location and you're dealing with some struggles of, hiring people and, I mean, it could be gone and you can take this in several different directions when it comes to business or just your different things that you're trying to improve on in your personal lives. But again, more than anything, just this idea of when you get to those phases of life or phases of business, embracing that and building that
Yeah.
muscle in a way it's that ghrelin leptin muscle or that feeling you're able to have the awareness and the consciousness to feel that, but then also to have that trigger in your mind that hey, that's just a sign, a signal that I am on the right path and I'm about to get through that and I'm going to be going
Mhm.
only up from there.
It's so powerful. What I'm hearing is the struggle is the gift. So
Yep.
thank you so much for sharing that. So
And I'll
powerful.
and I'll uh I'll dive into a little bit more into this here in a little bit. So,
Okay.
but before we do that, I think it'd be good just to take a quick break, and we're doing a few new segments of our show just to lighten things up. So, last week Ben shared a book he's reading. I also read, but not to the extent that he does. So I'm more of a jokester. So I just wanted to do a quick dad joke for you guys. So, and we're going to keep going on this theme of exercise and fitness and working out. So, Ben, why did the tree join a gym?
Let's hear it. Tell me.
It just wanted to branch out and, really work on its core.
Okay. Audience. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for sharing that. And this segment, Adam's Dad Joke of the Week, is brought to you by Adam Sells Denver. If you're looking for a real estate team that goes beyond the transaction, Adam Sells Denver offers full service solutions for buyers, sellers, and investors with a focus on education and personalized strategies. Adam and his team are dedicated to preparing you for the perfect moment ensuring your unique needs are met every step of the way. Adam Sells Denver is more than just a real estate agency, they're your partners from start to finish. Get started with free educational resources at adamsellsdenver.com or call 970 500 0252 today.
So, guys, now we're going to jump into the meat and potatoes of the actual concept behind these 5 stages of entrepreneurship. And again, this can be applied not only to business, but also to personal challenges you're having in your life. If you guys are watching our video version, first of all, thank you, because you definitely get more value out of some of these visual resources we put on the screen during our shows. If you're not, just so you guys are aware, we have a full episode that's video on our YouTube. Every single week it gets published on Friday mornings. So make sure you guys are, if available, checking it out there. So on my shared screen here, I'm going to just talk through what I'm looking at. So for any of our audience listening, they can also understand this. But this is basically just a line showing these 5 stages of change, 5 stages of entrepreneurship. And there's basically an X and a Y axis. So the X axis, the vertical, is basically your level of either pessimism or optimism. And then on the horizontal, going from left to right axis, that's going to be just these different levels that we're going through. So I'm going to just talk through real quickly all 5 of these and just give you guys a little bit of an explanation on what each of these is. And as I'm doing these, just think through again, like where you might be in some of the different levels or areas of your life or in your business that you're currently challenged with and maybe struggling with. So right off the bat, the very first of these 5, it's called uninformed optimism. So at the start of any entrepreneurial journey, there's always this sense of excitement, just this boundless, endless amount of energy. The possibilities seem endless, and the challenges ahead are often underestimated. So you're very, very optimistic. However, a lot of times people are a little bit uninformed. They're not aware of really what they have in store. And that, in that case, is again uninformed optimism. The mindset during this first stage is very high enthusiasm, confidence, a very positive outlook, but again with this
Yeah.
lack of understanding of really what is ahead.
It's almost like someone in that phase has not really critically thought of maybe the cost. How much is this going to cost? Or what is the time effort going to be? What are the organizational skills that are going to be required? I know that I've been there at times. You get so excited about something and you're just so focused on the idea that you haven't even, you don't even really have the ability yet to understand the challenge or hurdle ahead of you.
Yep. And a little side note, there's no set amount of time that any of these have. I mean, for some businesses, this uninformed optimism could last for years. For other
Yeah.
businesses, it might only be a couple weeks. A lot of this really is just case by case, and there's no way to, for some people, to understand which of these cycles you're necessarily in. If done correctly and really understanding your business correctly, I think that you always are going to be going in the right direction, meaning you're not going to go from 1 to 2 and then back to 1. As long as you have a
Yeah.
clear set direction and goal towards whatever that level of success is that you're shooting for, you should always be going at least in the right direction. So let's just talk
Okay.
now about going from that level 1 uninformed optimism. So if you guys are, again, if you're listening to this, we're going from kind of a upper left, we're kind of going down, so we're going from being very optimistic. Now we're kind of getting more across the border down south into more of a pessimist type environment. So number 2 is what we call informed pessimism. So we go from being an uninformed optimist to being an informed pessimist. So at this number 2 stage, as an entrepreneur starts to gain a little bit more experience, the reality of a lot of these challenges and these obstacles becomes a lot more clear. And this initial excitement very quickly starts to wean away, and it gets replaced by a lot more realistic and often negative perspective. So, Ben, like, not sure if you have any questions on this one. I'll talk a little bit more about a couple things here in a second, but
Yeah. So, for those of you that aren't looking at the graph, just try and explain to everyone the best you can. It looks like a valley, or it kind of looks like you're at one end of the Grand Canyon and you're kind of headed down the canyon. So, kind of explain what we're looking at and why.
Yep. Yeah. So you're going from being at the top of the mountain, top of the Grand Canyon. Now you're about halfway down on one side. So, for anybody that just doesn't understand the word a pessimist is just somebody that sees the glass half empty as opposed to half full. On a little side note, just a quick story. So one of my, favorite people in the world was my grandfather, my grandpa Jerry, and he was, in a different generation than us, where he was a salesman going around the country into, hardware stores and grocery stores. He sold a line of um, herbicides, and Ortho was the company. But anyways, that aside, one of the things that he instilled in me is he was the most optimistic person ever. I don't care what was going on. He was like Zig Ziglar. He was just always positive, always looking at the glass half full. And what I took away from just my time with him in my life was I think that might be the biggest superpower that people can have is
Yeah.
really having this level of optimism because you're able to see these challenges that you're facing not as negative things that are just negatively happening to you, but really those are opportunities to grow and just ways to get better and just to look at that from a totally different angle if you're an optimist. So again,
Mhm.
going back to the stage two, informed pessimism. Really, what this is about is again, you're lacking that motivation and that excitement that you had initially, and you're kind of like, "Oh crap, I'm in this. Like, this is tough. Like, this is not what I was expecting. This is a challenge." Growing level of doubt, concern, the difficulties of that journey just become a lot more apparent, and the stage is just, again,
Okay.
often accompanied by a lot of frustration and a lot of anxiety. So this is not a
And so
fun
that's
stage.
that why it's going down the canyon, because the informed pessimist is starting to understand kind of what they're up against and just maybe like losing some momentum, or just kind of
Yep.
not as high as they were based off of that initial phase.
Correct. Yep. And then hopefully
Okay.
you're not in that phase, that second stage for too long. Hopefully eventually you get down to what is this whole episode is all about, which is all about this mental toughness. Stage
Yeah.
three is known as the Valley of Despair. And the Valley of
Okay.
Despair, going back to my first topic on the two different hormones, the leptin and ghrelin, this is an example of when you're in this valley of despair and you're able to eventually get that mindset shift where you can embrace that stage of life or that stage of business that you're in, and knowing that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that you are supposed to be in that place because once you get through that valley, it's all up from there. So if you're not looking at the image, again, this is at the very bottom of the Grand Canyon with the last two stages, 4 and 5, going back up the other side. So in this third stage, this valley of despair, this is really just the critical stage where a lot of entrepreneurs face significant setbacks, failures, and just sometimes overwhelming challenges. And these difficulties, a lot of times, they just seem insurmountable. And, a lot of times quitting really just feels like the best or the most viable option. So this is a tough place to be in, and I've definitely been in here before with my prior business, even right now in real estate. I think Ben and I are both maybe in certain ways in just being in this industry in a little bit of this valley of despair, or at least a lot of people that we're connected with in the same industry as us are definitely in this, where they're seeing the recent changes that maybe some of you guys are aware of with the NAR settlement. They're seeing this just as
Yeah.
this valley of despair, where very even more level of pessimism, but also just feeling like there's no hope. There's just this amount of setbacks and just challenges that are just overwhelming. And how in the world are we ever going to get out of this? Do we keep moving forward, or do we throw in the towel and quit?
It doesn't sound like a place that you really want to visit, but why don't you share with everyone why it's so important to have to go through this and go through the valley of despair?
So, the valley of despair, I mean, it's the lowest point, not just mentally, but also for a lot of times, a lot of people emotionally. But this is again where that resilience is truly tested.
Yeah.
And this is also just where any entrepreneur or anybody that's going through something serious in their life, where you really need just to dig down deep, push through that discomfort, and then just stay focused on that long term vision, because you have to know that success lies beyond this stage. And there's no way to get to that next stage without going through the valley of despair. So, um,
Well, I was going to say what. So what I'm hearing is that it's so important to go through this because of what it makes of you and the person that you become on the other side.
Yeah, mental toughness, just like a typical muscle in your body, it's something that you have to work out and grow. And if you don't, you're going to eventually lose
Yeah.
it. So this ability to have mental toughness, in my opinion, is created through personal experiences of being in this valley of despair. If you live a life always very cush and never go through challenges and are able to teach yourself through personal experience how you've been able to get through those challenges, if you haven't done that, you really have a very shallow level of motivation or mental toughness. And when times do get tough, you're going to fold and you're not going to make it through. So, just really understanding more than anything else on the stage three, I just want to get everybody to understand that this is when true greatness is, I think, achieved, is the people that are willing to understand and embrace being in that position and are also willing to put in the work and just the effort to get through it, because that's when you find success.
Maybe you could say that it's achieved in the valley of despair, but a lot of that greatness is achieved in valley of despair, but it's not recognized until you get to some of these other stages.
And sometimes you might not even know. Like, I mean, I went through this a few times in my business career in the past where you think you're in the valley of despair and maybe it still goes down even deeper than you're expecting. Maybe you're
Mm.
actually in a false low, where it can go
Wait,
even.
are you saying there's like multiple valleys here of
There can
despair?
be, and I think though the bigger uh, takeaway from that is just with every time you go through this, this isn't a once in a lifetime thing. This is something you're going to go
Yeah.
through in different areas of your life. Once though you start doing it and you start persevering, getting through it, the next example that you go through, the next experience that you have a similar scenario where you're going through that valley of despair, you're able to recognize it more easily, and you're able to at least
Mhm.
appreciate it and not have it not affect you nearly as much as maybe it did the first time because of that mental toughness that you're building.
Yeah. So important and so critical. And what I love about this is when you have the awareness, I feel like this is something that's not just relevant for entrepreneurs, but like I can relate this to my teenage kids. Like I've mentioned on a couple other episodes where we are going through what is a more difficult time because they are changing. They're going from kids to teenagers to young adults. There's hormones involved. They want more independence. And by kind of recognizing that we're going through this valley, the relationship that I had with my mom, the reason I said that our relationship was so good before she passed was because of the valleys that we went through together. Our lows were so low and it made our highs so high. And so because of that, we went through these incredible lows. We got to experience these incredible highs. And so when I hear you talk about this from an entrepreneur perspective, I also think it's very relevant with relationships, children, intimate relationships. So it's just really exciting stuff.
Hmm. So going back to this path that we're on, we've persevered. We've gotten through the valley of despair. We're starting to see light at the end of the tunnel. We're getting up now, crossing that border now back up above from being a pessimist back into an optimistic state. So the fourth stage of this is what we call informed optimism. So again, just to recap, number one was uninformed optimism, going down the first side of the Grand Canyon. We hit number two, which is so we go from uninformed optimism to informed pessimism, down to the valley of despair, and now we're back up to number four, which is informed optimism. So after persevering through that valley of despair, now the entrepreneur starts to see progress, gains a more
Yeah.
balanced and realistic view of their business, And challenges, they're still going to be present, but that outlook you have is a lot more positive. And again, it's informed. You're learning from your mistakes. You're aware of what kind of challenges are being presented, and you're able to hopefully to overcome a lot more of those. The other thing I would just say regarding mindset in this fourth stage of being an informed optimist is really just having this renewed optimism, and it's grounded again in experience. So by having more experience and getting through some of these lows, the entrepreneur then now has a much more clear understanding of what does and doesn't work. And you're just a lot more better equipped to handle any setbacks that occur from this point forward.
The uninformed optimism from stage one is, to me, it feels like it's about emotion, it's about excitement, it's about what's possible, but you're not, operating from a place of data or a fact or experience. And what I'm hearing from the informed optimism is that you've already endured significant challenges, problems. You've already gone through a place called the valley of despair, and you're crawling up the wall,
Hmm. Yep, absolutely. And
and
then
you're not
number
going to
five,
stop.
And then number five, the fifth one, it doesn't have a cool name like the other four. It's really just success. So success, fulfillment, basically this fifth and final stage of entrepreneurship is just success. So, your business at this point is beginning to stabilize, it's beginning to thrive. And the entrepreneur now gets to enjoy some of the rewards of their hard work, whether it's financial success, just that personal satisfaction, and just the sense of achievement of, completing their mission or completing whatever it is that you're working on. I will also say just the mindset that you are able to build and reap the rewards of having once you get completely through this five-stage process is you have that confidence, you have that satisfaction, accomplishment. However, there's always still room for growth. There's always going to be new
Mm.
challenges, but that foundation now is established, it's solid, and it's going to allow you to, when you go through this again with any other future, um, you know, goals, projects, businesses, whatever it may be, hopefully the time it's going to take you to get from stage one to stage five will be quicker. You're going to have a lot more of an educated understanding of this. You're going to be able to realize where and when you're at these different stages and embrace that and hopefully use that as motivation and just awareness to get through and know that there is, again, light at the end of the tunnel and the ability to persevere and not give up and get through this.
I feel like when you've gone through these stages, you can look at one side of the canyon, from that view and look down into the valley of despair and then over to the first and second steps, the pessimistic step and the uninformed optimism. And I feel like you would have changed so much, not just the mental toughness, but being a stronger person, a more resilient person. Probably some of your behaviors have changed, your habits to become that mentally tough. And it's like what would have crushed you or debilitated you in step one may not even phase you in step five.
I know we both really love David Goggins, and I think of just how probably keen and self-aware he is with this when it comes to some of these challenges he puts himself through, specifically these long distance runs and different, endurance type challenges he signs up for on his own accord, which is pretty crazy. If you guys don't know who David Goggins is, look him up. But he's a guy that's done, several ultra marathons. He's done a couple, I know, races down in the Arizona, Nevada. One's called the Badwater 130. It's a 135-mile race through the hottest place in the United States. Maybe I don't want to say it's in the world, but I mean it's like insane heat.
Mm.
And just thinking through how probably he goes through this in his own way, even just on those races. You have these
Yeah.
times where you just don't think you can keep going. You're really starting to have a lot of self doubt, maybe some negativity creeping into your brain. But I think he probably has an amazing awareness of that valley of despair and is able to embrace it and get through that and use that probably as motivation. I think he actually uses a term like embrace the suck, I think is one of the things he says, where
Okay.
you're really just aware of that and you're able to use that to your advantage and motivate yourself just to get through that, knowing that if you're feeling that, you're on the right path, you're going in the right direction, you're almost there.
Another reason, in my opinion, to do things that are very challenging on a consistent daily basis. Really challenge yourself every day, because when you get used to challenging yourself in one area of your life, you can apply that in several areas of your life.
Love that, man. Cool. Well, before we wrap up this episode, we're trying to engage with our audience as much as we can. And you guys, would love just to hear maybe some examples that you've faced when it comes to that valley of despair. You guys can leave us a comment on any social media platform or on all of them, or on any of our podcast episodes. If you're listening on Spotify, you can leave a comment on the episode itself. Or if you're watching this, hopefully on YouTube, just in the comments down below. We'd love just to engage with you guys a little bit and learn maybe about some of these valleys of despair that you've personally faced, and how hopefully great it felt to get through them, and that mental toughness muscle, how you've been able to, grow that and be even stronger.
Well, thank you, Adam, and thank you to our audience for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. We'll see you guys next Friday.
Have a good one, guys. See you then.